Oh no, I'm an early bird, so there's a lot of on social media. There's a few people kind of talking about how important it is to get up early before everyone else is, and it's so productive. It's so true, especially when you have kids. It's like, oh my gosh, if I don't get up early before she's up and do my gym and my meditation and get myself sorted, it's like that generally doesn't happen. Like I don't get to the gym, I don't get my meditation in, and getting myself sorted is extremely slowed down. So it's much more productive getting up early. So no, I've been awake for a couple of hours, and yeah.
And what are you like? What are your things that you're doing when you're up that early?
So I do a meditation first, and then we go to the gym, and we're living. My mum is living at my mum's at the moment, so that makes it. In the past, we've had to do the tag team thing where one of us goes for a run and then like take turns. But with living at mum's, it's really nice. We can both go to the gym together and be on the
Oh, that's
treadmills
cool.
together, it's really cool. Like we haven't been able to do that for like, how old is she? 7 years. So it's like, doing kind of things like that as a couple again is a bit, it's really nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it's basically some time alone and away from like that.
Yeah.
You can basically fill that time yourself without thinking of somebody else. Basically, that's kind of
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We both put in podcasts as we're running along, and it's really nice. And then we both like, oh my God, I just heard. It's really nice without having, Mom, Dad, I can't find my, like it's.
Yeah, right.
Someone said to me before we had Guinevere, they said, you have no idea how much time you have until you have children. And I remember that, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to really appreciate this then. And so I would recall that thought every now and then, and I like, oh, this is so nice. I've got a whole Saturday, and it's so freeing. Like I would really like appreciate it, and I'm glad I did that. I love being a mum, but it's most people do have. And this might be a nice segue, but most people do have that. They have that village, like they have their grandparents that live around the corner. They have their siblings who are aunts and uncles, or cousins who are like aunts and uncles. That generally people tend to go back to where they grow up to have that support. But there seems to be like this growing trend today where it's because of careers and people's different interests that they don't have that. And so when you become a parent, it's like, it's just been me and my husband looking after her. I think she's been babysat very rarely, and there are paid services, but it's so much nicer when it is a family member looking after her. And yeah, we have friends that are like, every weekend their kids spend time with their grandparents, which is really, really lovely, and then they get to go off and have wine night and beersies with their friends. And yeah, but, yeah.
Do you want to quickly do the introduction and then we can start?
I actually was thinking while she was talking that it's kind of lovely everything you've already been saying. So I think we've already started.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Just
then
jump in.
Just let me still introduce or say hello to you formally. So hi, Cheri. Thank you for joining us today. And let's go into it.
Yeah.
You sent me your website, and we read through it, and we talked briefly on the website about the village design that you came up with, but a lot of people are probably not familiar with it. So maybe just quickly or go into what is village design, and also why did you think about it, or how did you come up with it?
Yeah, sure. So village design is a label that I've given to my own original approach to creating a community. And like today we're taught to create a vision and then have a goal, and then along the way you're going to have to like change your approach, but just keep getting there and don't give up, which is a really great which works and is a great approach. And I was really lucky. I grew up with a dad who was I am yet to find anyone who was more curious than him. Like his curiosity is uncontested. And he wasn't like, a university professor or anything. He was a mechanic who just loved to create and ask anyone anything. He was highly, highly extroverted. But he kind of role modeled that, you know, you ask one question and you never know where it's going to lead to the next question and the next question, the next question. And creation also comes from that, as much as I've got this huge vision and I'm going to head there. It also comes from maybe not having a vision, but just having like an internal nudge, or just what he called following your heart. And so that's how village design came about, I just followed my nose. It was just, I kept asking questions which were around, how can I create community for my family? We've only got one daughter and we can't have any more children. So I really wanted her to be wherever she is in the world, to know that she belongs somewhere and that there are people where she's got deep relationships with. And so they were the two kind of questions I kept exploring. And we tried conventional ways of creating community. So, you know, if you Google how do you create community, or how do you make friends, it will tell you to go join like a club, like a gardening club, or you know, join a sports team, or get on a community group. Or a family friend told me to join the local school board. I remember saying, I was like, Mary, that's a lot of work to make friends. Like, but, and there's those conventional ways. But when you live remotely, or you're sick, or you're when you have a kid, it can be quite limiting. So like if the gardening club's meeting at 7 p.m. at night, and actually a lot of interest groups meet around 7 o'clock at night, that allows people to get home from work, get changed, have something to eat, and then go out. 7 o'clock tends to be when children go to bed, and they don't just go to bed at 7 o'clock. Like, it's a long process. And so, you know, when I read like Harvard in 2021, they did a study into loneliness, and they found that 61% of young adults identified with being lonely, and 51% of mothers with young children identified with being lonely. So I think there's a perception that loneliness comes from people who live on their own, and that it's people who want, you know, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, they want a partner. But I think it has many more forms than that. And even like, I have a wonderful husband, he's my best friend, and the most gorgeous little girl, but there's still like, I knew just intuitively that, I mean, I grew up in a very, I knew what it was like to have that buzz of a village with like people ringing and dropping by and sending nice letters and cards, and us going and visiting them. Like, I knew what that was like, and I wanted that for my family too, because you just want them to be appreciated and loved by others as much as you love and appreciate them. So I just kept following my nose, and the pandemic hit in 2020, and that kind of collided with my questions. And I was like, oh, my extended family, I wonder how they're doing. Like, when you see the videos of like people, you know, dropping dead in the streets, and it was like, oh wow, like my aunts and uncles who I haven't talked to in like decades. And then I found that actually getting their phone numbers was a treasure hunt. It was like, not everyone had everyone's phone numbers, or to ring up and check on them. And I was like, this is really hard. I was like, well, if I'm going to spend all this effort with getting all this information, like, I wouldn't want anyone else to do this, go for the same effort again. So I kind of created this book, which I invited everyone to participate in, which kind of shared their contact information and that they wanted to share, and fun things like favorite song, movie, and book. And at the time, I was like, oh, this is naff. Like, this is like high school stuff, or like, you know, what's your favorite song? But I was like, there was a nudge inside that was like, this is important. And I just, the stories I have from finding out people's songs and their favorite books and their movies, their favorite places in nature, like, some are hilarious, and one of my brother's favorite songs is Come On Eileen, and and whenever I hear it in the supermarket or whatever, I just, he lives on the other side of the world in Canada, and whenever I hear it in the supermarket or in the car or whatever on the radio, I just feel like he's there with me. And it just, he's such a fun-loving, kind of happy-go-lucky kind of guy, which kind of captures that in that song. And it just makes me, you know, if I'm just checking out what's the cheapest almond milk, all of a sudden I'm like singing and dancing in my head as though he's there with me. And deep and meaningful, like my dad chose Roger Whittaker's Sailing, which is more widely known by Rod Stewart's version. And he passed away very suddenly, unexpectedly, about 4 months after finding that out. And, you know, my dad was over 6 foot high, and he was like very like broad-shouldered. He had giant hands that mine still felt like a little girl when I held his hand, and he was just this, covered in grease and oil from fixing things and that kind of guy. But that was his favorite song. He had his poetic heart, and we all sung that together at his funeral when we were scattered around the world due to lockdowns, and it was such a great gift to him to give, and it just meant so much to everyone. But so I kind of keep thinking, everyone's just indulging me, like this is just everyone being really nice to me. And then we explored my husband's side, and I was like, oh, there's something here, like this is sustainable. Like we've moved house twice this year. We've moved down to support my mum, who needed help after Dad passing away, and when I left my job, the community kind of was with the job. So when I kind of became a full-time mum, I kind of thought, I'd still catch up with coffees with these people and and it just wasn't easy because it's just not, because you're not there in the office, you just lose that connection. And but with extended family, it's the only way in is through marriage and birth and adoption, and the only way out is through death and divorce. And it's there is no way, like they might, you don't turn up to Christmas, you might be a bit like, but might ruffle some feathers sometimes, but they, people get over it, generally, most of the time. So that's kind of how I came about it. And I was like, actually, I would really love to, if it helps people, like I've just launched my website and just kind of putting it out there. And if it helps anyone, I would just, so I think what I'm offering is people's, how to help people find their family, who are they, and there's some people do know their extended family really, really well, and some people don't know them at all. And so there's a big range in between. And then there's contacting them, which can be really difficult for some people, especially if you're introverted. And then there's the sustaining those relationships. So I've kind of, through experimental with my own extended family, have come up with some tools and methodologies that really work. And and sometimes, like, just sharing that is enough for people to go, oh, great, I can just get on with that. But very happy. Some people like to have their hand held and have to have someone walk with them along the journey, and I'm offering my services in that capacity as well. Yeah.
So what kind of things do you do to help them if they really want, like, the one-on-one? Do you reach out to family members, or do you help them find family members if they don't know where they are?
Yeah, so definitely I wouldn't be the one reaching out for them. I think it's encouraging, coaching them and helping them with whatever it is. So for some people it might be they literally don't know who they are. And so it's like, so for me, like my mum keeps in touch with her 4 siblings. So that was easy. That was the one I started with because that was the easiest. But then there are people that have just lost touch with their family, or I don't know who they were because they were adopted. And
sure.
And I've been amazed with, I don't know why, I guess I didn't have too much to do with adoption growing up, but I've been amazed at how many people have been adopted or didn't know that they were, or didn't know that their parents were. And highly, highly recommend the DNA services offered by, I particularly like Ancestry.com. Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah, sure.
My aunt did a lot of stuff with Ancestry and like found our whole family background, and it's cool. Really cool. Yeah.
It's so cool. And what's I think a lot of people don't realize is it's not just like the family trees. It's when you do your DNA, I think people get given it as a gift for Christmas, and it's a great gift. It's how my husband gave it to me as a gift, and for the ethnicity. So it's really fun to find out, oh, I'm 70% Irish, and wow, I'm like 15% Scottish. I didn't know that. But it's what the services do is they connect you with all your DNA matches, and then you can email them, and it's super cool. And it actually tells you, it'll be like, these are your siblings, like this is your mum. But they have to have done a test, and it's, I mean, just personally, I have a lot of stories where turns out people didn't know, like there's a distantish kind of cousin who's just gorgeous, and she thought that the family that she had was her family, and she had spent like most of her life as a hobby studying it, like your aunt, Dani. And then she did her DNA, and she was like, this isn't making any sense. Like, where is this family? And they actually, Ancestry contacted her because she wasn't answering any of her emails. They were like, oh, we're going to help you out here. And yeah, it turns out that there was this whole story. And so the family that she thought that was one of her communities wasn't actually her, it was her heart family, but and they'd raised her mother as being part of the family, but it wasn't actually her blood family. And she'd actually even gone to Ireland, like she traveled halfway around the world to like research this family, and it turns out it was a real shock for her. But now she has that, I think, in some ways, it's after you get over the shock, for a lot of people, it's that blessing of, oh, wow, I've got two families. I've got a blood family and a heart family, and that's really special. So I definitely encourage that, because even just doing my own DNA, I've helped other people kind of go, oh, wow, I'm really not this, or, oh, like it's helped make connections. And so I highly encourage like the validating that. And then, you know, some ways it might not always be possible to find out that particular family branch, but it's helping people kind of, I think a lot of people get really frustrated by it. Like on Ancestry, you find a lot of family trees that they call them brick walls, and they're trying to break through their brick wall because they really want to find out who this person was, who their grandfather was, or who their father was. And I think there is an element of just finding grace to accept that if it's not obvious and easy, then it's just, you know, it may come about one day when there's more and more people do the DNA matching. But for now, it's just, you know, focusing on what you do know and letting it be. Yeah, and I'm helping people with, I think the big thing is I know who they are, but I don't want to talk to them because they've betrayed me, they've hurt me. I'm not good enough because of my past or whatever. There's these thoughts that people have, like even I had. It was like, you know, why wasn't I in touch with some of these people? And it's just kind of encouraging them to just give it a go, because it is just the most amazing experience. And the stories, we are all raised with these stories of, and we, you know, we are a culture, like the whole world is raised, regardless of what culture you come from. You are raised on these stories of villains and heroes. I mean, that is generally the plot of all the stories. And there's a hero and there's a villain. And we go looking for it within our families. And we do. And you know, I just don't think there are very few people in history that you can, well, maybe not few, but in the total history of the world. But, there, you know, there's true villains. You know, generally you're not going to find them in your extended family. Generally.
True.
And you know, I think we're all great in some capacity. I just don't think, you know, I think we should caution glorifying just one person, but family stories tend to do that. And so I was, you know, my dad had an older brother. Dad was great, you know, he had an older brother he loved, and he had they had a younger sister who they wouldn't talk to. And I was raised on stories around that. And so I had really nothing to do with my aunt. And then I was curious in the pandemic, and I rang her, and we talked for 3 hours. And it was like, you know, it was just, I just chose that one of my things is have an open heart and open mind. And those stories are fictional. And, you know, it's just, it's, I think the stories we tell more about the storyteller than they do actually what happened. Yeah. Anyway, so help people with that. Yeah.
That's really cool, and also very interesting, because it's funny when you talk to people and ask them about their family, then sometimes, or I experience that most of the time, they prefer one side of the family over the other. And it's exactly how you just said, that they have stories that other people told, or their parents told, or their siblings, or aunts, uncles, and you then lean towards the one family. And it's weird, because it was the same in my family when I leaned more towards my mom's side of the family. But then again, it had nothing to do with them. It had all to do with, okay, we all living in the small town, so there's closer proximity, especially as a kid, you could just walk there. And growing up, I didn't have to do much with them. But coming back to the loneliness factor, I'm very curious about that. Are there any studies that suggest that I mean, I would assume so, but that suggests that like trying to grow your family or trying to reach out to extended family that diminish that a little bit or lowers the loneliness.
No, I've not come across anything, and would love to hear if anyone who listens to this does know. So it's, I mean, I've not come across anything at all. But I do know that it's definitely worked for my family. So, you know, we've known loneliness through sickness, through living really remotely, being new to a small kind of country rural town. You know, in some towns, there is a saying that it's like, oh, it's not the town, it's you. Like, you know, maybe you're not friendly.
Yeah.
And so I have heard that response a little bit. I don't know if you guys have heard this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's, yeah. And no, I'm just gonna like, and then it's like I've heard enough about this particular town that we lived in. I was like, there'd be enough different people from like a priest and a different people I came across who had also moved there and attempted to set up, you know, life there. And I think actually, you know, there are just some towns that are just not friendly. They're just not, because that's their most of those people have lived there for a long time, and they're just not friendly. And you know, they're friendly to the people that they know, but to newbies, it's like, oh, like yeah. But you know, extended family, it's these are shared stories. I mean, cold calling cousins, second cousins is a very strange kind of experience. It's different. It's not something we do every day, and it's there's a level of uncomfortableness because it's not a normal thing. And like to ring someone and be like, oh hi, our nanas were sisters, we're second cousins. I'm Cheri and interested in reconnecting the family through, you know, creating what I call as a fun family kind of phone book. And they straight away, like almost straight away, the conversation is just like, oh wow, like, you know, I heard about your nana and I've got these stories, or and your parents' first cousin. So I define extended family as everyone under your great grandparents. So you have 4 great grandparents, and so you have 4 of these kind of villages. And my husband's one of his grandmothers was an only child, so we experimented with going a level higher, and that was still really great. We've contacted some really gorgeous family members, but there was kind of a less interest in it because I think it's just a little bit more removed, and there's not that shared stories and that shared kind of, oh, I heard, or it's just not quite there as much. But I think if your great grandparents, generally the majority of people are interested and want to be part of it, and you know, I think a lot of people loneliness is, I think today, it's so widespread. I think Harvard's estimates would be underestimated. I think there are a lot of people that wouldn't want to identify with loneliness. Like even for me, like there's almost like this shame that is associated with it. Like I'm not good enough to have friends or to sustain these relationships. And it reminds you of some of the, you know, the betrayal stories. Like I had a girlfriend who we flattered together when we studied, and then when we were, you know, new to professional life, and we, for like 5 years we lived together, and we were like, we'd talk, oh, you know, we're sisters to another mother, and we were like, I never dreamed of a world where we wouldn't be friends. And, you know, one day she said to me on the phone, look, you're just going to have to find other friends. And it was like, it was, you know, those betrayals and those rejections really hurt, and they can make us feel not good enough. And I think then loneliness starts, I think that's deeply associated with it, because you start to, without unconsciously, because you don't feel good enough, you don't really put yourself out there as much, and you're not willing to be as vulnerable again because that was used to hurt you. Like, yeah, so I've not come across any studies, but I know from my own experience, it definitely works. Yeah.
I had a really good question. No, but what I found out, like when I grew older, reaching out to the family and trying to reconnect with them, especially with my father's side. And again, I mean, we're so close together. Most of my family members, I'm very thankful for that, are in like reach of I would say 40 to 60 minutes driving time, and some of them are like walking.
Wow.
yeah, we're at very close proximity, and I mean Austria is very small, so even if someone would live at the other end of Austria, that's still only a 2 or 3 hour car ride, so it's very close.
Wow.
Everything. And I wonder, because Danielle, she's from America, and in America, everybody is widespread. Obviously, they move from state to state, from coast to coast, and so why do you think is it so hard? Obviously, besides the stories, but why do you think it's hard for other people in the family to reach out or to stay connected? Because nowadays, with phones, WhatsApp, Facebook, even it would be so easy. One would think.
I think it's definitely the stories. Geography definitely has a huge part to play. We just live so widespreadly now, and I recently read the memoir by Jennifer Worth called The Midwife, and that's based 1950s in London and the East End. And what I didn't realise was how historical she was so good at writing about the history of things. Like, she talked about the 1950s, the extended family groups were really strong, and they lived really, like, in the tenement blocks, they lived really closely together, and they all supported each other really well. And then I think it was in the sometime later when the government started to tear down those tenements, and they basically broke up the families across London. And she said that killed a lot of the old people because they couldn't go and see their grandchildren, and it just was too hard for people to stay connected, and people lost that family support, and it did not help any social issues. It really didn't, having them spread out. So geography does definitely have a role to play. And I think that technology can be really helpful, but at the same time, I think it's actually being part of the problem. So, like Facebook, for instance, I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, I just think that it's I think it creates the illusion of connection. And so, you put up the photo of your little 1-year-old and and people like it, and they make a comment, and that's really nice, and but it's like eating a McDonald's hamburger compared to a homemade hamburger, right? Like, you kind of feel you've had the hamburger, but it hasn't filled you, and it's like, but it was tasted so good, but the homemade one really fills you. And I think that's the same with things like likes and posts on Facebook. And so it's no substitute to having someone actually hold your little girl and play with her, but it's so we went on. I did a little experiment back then. Like, I was like, oh, this is really, like, I was just really surprised by the lack of interaction, I guess. I'm trying to be really diplomatic here with what I say, in case family members or people listen to this and they're like, oh.
How dare you?
Yeah. It's like, well, you're not talking to me anyway, so that would be actually a good step in the direction of communication. But it's, I was really surprised by the lack of kind of interaction with her, which you very quickly go interest. It's like, how could you not be interested in her? She's so gorgeous, and there's the likes on the photos, but where's the phone calls? Where's the, hey, how's she doing? Where's the the parcels in the mail, or the hey, when are you guys coming down, or we're coming up? And I live in New Zealand. It's not that big. I mean, it's not as small as Austria, but it's and. So I was really curious. We went on Facebook, and I was just a little bit like, oh, I wonder if that will help. People were like, oh, what are they up to? Or I was just kind of curious. And it was really nice being off Facebook. It was really nice. And B, nothing happened.
Oh. Okay.
like I was like, wow, wow, okay. And I guess people were like, well, if you want us to express an interest, then get back on Facebook. You clearly want to keep to yourself, so we'll let you be by yourself. But yeah, so I was like, no. But whereas, reaching out to people and being like, do you want to be part of family? I mean, the people that don't, because there will be people that just, for whatever reason, they want to keep to themselves, or they really don't like the concept of family, or whatever. And they're the people that you're not going to be able to get a hold of anyway, to be honest. Like, finding their phone number to ring them, have an actual phone conversation is and the people that do have the phone number know not to share it. Like,
okay.
And so generally the people that you can get a hold of and can contact, like I've got an older cousin who is, she's more like an aunt to my daughter. Like, she's just so gorgeous. And would I have been able to create that relationship off Facebook? Maybe, but having an actual conversation on the phone is just incomparable. And we don't do it anymore. People don't do it because they feel like,
Yep.
oh, I heard from them, I saw their photo and I liked it.
Yeah, and with social media in general, I totally agree with you. I think it kills relationships more than it feeds them, and our connections are so superficial then, and they're so, like you said, it's just a like and a comment, and it kind of gives you this little maybe boost of, I don't know, dopamine or whatever, where you're like, oh, this person likes it. Even if it's just a random stranger who likes it, you're like, oh, somebody likes it, so that's my communication for the day, or that's my human connection. But, I also kind of it was less of an experiment how you did it, but more of like a necessity. So an unplanned experiment. But when I moved to Austria, first I moved from Wisconsin to Oregon, so completely across the country from each other. And I was there for a year, and even that move was enough to recognize how many people stopped contacting me, like how many of my friends that I had for years and years and years, all of a sudden were just gone from my life. And unless I reached out to them, and if I would reach out to them, then they would maybe talk a little bit, but it was never like, hey, let's set up a phone call, or hey, let's, nothing like that. And then when I moved to Austria, it was like that times 20, where it's just all of a sudden, so I have like my two really best friends that I still have really good contact with, but otherwise it's kind of like everyone just kind of goes and lives their life. And and because we see what everybody does because of social media, we constantly know how people are doing, or how it seems like they're doing. And we constantly know, okay, they did this the other day, or they went to this concert, or, so people feel like they don't have, right, exactly. Why should I call? Why should we talk? I already know. What are we going to talk about? They're just going to tell me all these things I know already. But true. I think that's exactly the problem, because a lot of people just post the highlights, or they just post, bits and pieces that they think people will like, but you don't actually get to know the person that way.
Yeah.
Or the struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea, like, how much. What I found unexpectedly was everything, but each kind of family has like a distinct tapestry. So like, one of my mum's sides is deeply musical. Like, they're just, I thought at the time, like, it was my first family I kind of reconnected, and I thought, oh, every family's got to have this level of music. And they were all like really quiet. Like, there was a real kind of familiar kind of etiquette. Like, it was a little bit kind of reminded me, like, it was just very polite, and there was a lot of kind of gentle etiquette with that family. And then my dad's mother's side is there's this fearlessness and this boldness, and they're not musical at all. Although I had two great uncles that played the bagpipes, which I never knew about, but they're into motorbikes. They ride Harleys. They fly helicopters. They teach people how to fly helicopters. They're at 50 meters heights working. They're quilt makers as well, which I think is equally fearless. But they're just so present. Like, not to say that's better or worse than anything else, but these are. I think some people find that a bit intimidating. There's this huge presence about them that they're here, and I think that's this tapestry is a familiarity there. So like when Dad passed away, it's. I said to Mum, I was like, would you, on the day, I said, would you like me to contact his side of the family? And the words flew out of my mouth before I realised that the magnitude of what I'd said. And Mum was like, yes, please. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And so I rang his side of the family and told them, but there was something really I just can't, like, talking to his side of the family and telling them it was so it was such a beautiful experience because there's this familiarity because they're like my dad. They've got his fearlessness and his boldness and their way of being, and it's so comforting. Like, I mean, you could not get that in a yes, there's different writing styles and people write up their social media posts and stuff, but to hear that voice, to hear the tones and the mannerisms used, it's even more so in person. Like, one of Dad's first cousins, they didn't have much to do with each other because their mums didn't get along at all. But he came to visit us recently once we had moved here, and my husband just could not stop laughing. And my little girl, who's normally like, she's just, chat, like she's this constant stream of questions and singing and all sorts of things. And she just was like big-eyed and was just quiet as a mouse. And I just had tears streaming down my face because the way that he talks is, and his mannerisms, and even the fact that he'd brought this huge set of ice creams, like, it was just like all these like little things all at once were like, it was like my dad was so present at that moment, and it was just you can't get that. I think it's, for me, it was like, I mean, what other ways do you get through grief? Through counselling, through groups, but actually being with your family is especially that side of the family is hugely and even like our daughter's 7, and so she doesn't have that many memories of her grandfather as much as we would like her to have. But I can say, he's like his cousin like this, and he's like a sister like this, and she'll have a greater sense of what he was like because she knows that side of the family really well. There are always outliers, but generally there is this huge and uncanny synergies and coincidences in the family where you go, this is just, you couldn't make it up. There's this strong patterns in the family. It's almost like there's a family play, and it's every generation is given a role, and that's it's almost like that. And this is the setting, and these are the hobbies, and it's just so, and sometimes it's quite freeing to go, oh, actually, I don't want that. Or I do, like, I really would like this, but it's sometimes it's nice to go, well, I thought that was my own choice, but actually turns out I was just following the family story without knowing it. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
no, it does. It totally does. I when you say things like that, I have my own family in my mind and know exactly. Oh yeah, this is that. Yeah, it's so interesting that the human experience is the same. As you said at the beginning, there's no, like, we're all humans and we all experience the same thing, just on a different level or in a different setting or in a different culture, but it's the same thing essentially. And I think it's so cool the idea of just reconnecting with the family and extended family, because that's something that is not, everybody moves away, everybody lives in a different town or apartment, and you move out and you come back to maybe some holidays or Christmas, but that's it. That's usually it. And if you are not that close, then you rarely talk to your family, especially the extended family. And I think it's so sad because those are there's this saying, what is it, like, you can't choose your family or something like that. But I think that's the beauty in it, that you can't choose it. They're chosen for you, and there's so much to gain from that, because you don't have to look for friends. They're already there. You just have to, keep the friendship going, basically. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's, I had thought when you were talking about, with the geography. Yeah, it's, you don't, there are those that do, at some point people might all live together, like maybe they do all live quite close together in a town, but you don't know where life might take them. And actually, or where it might take you, or even just for traveling and for holidays, it's like, oh wow, I didn't know I had a cousin there. But I think, like, growing up, I had like a lot of contact with family. But and I look back on it, it was because they were my parents' favourites. So my dad got along with his brother, but not his sister. But he didn't leave a door open for us to make our own connections with his sister. He didn't encourage it. And I think that's it's not the Brady Bunch. Like, I will never ever say that you're going to have a perfectly happy family, everyone gets along. I think that's just I think it's part of, there's it's just never going to happen. And but I do think that when you limit your view of family and you contain it to just I think I'm a scientist by background, and when I realized, like, oh my gosh, my concept of family was so limited. Like, I had my three brothers, I had my parents, I had a few kind of select who were just people that I had a lot to do with because they were my parents' favorites. But when I actually went, okay, I'm going to be scientific about this and rank everyone, it was really amazing. And even like things that had been assumed, like even on my mum's side, it was like, oh, everyone knows everything. And it was like, no, it turns out they didn't. Like, turns out there was a cousin who was a grandmother already, and no one actually, turns out, that particular sibling wasn't that good at passing on information. Like, and it's, and we worked both ways. Like, she didn't know much about what was going on, and, does not to turn him into the villain or anything. It's just not his strength. He's just not someone that is good at exchanging information. And, and I think one of the assumptions can be is that I know my extended family, I know all of them, I know what they're up to, I know who they are. And even asking, like, so this book that I encourage people to put together, because I'm an ambivert, I can be introverted and I can be extroverted, I can find group conversations energizing and I can find them draining. So I switch between the two. And I know what it's like to be an introvert and to be to find it difficult to have those initial conversations and to put yourself out there. And having a focal point, like when we're at schools, we always we work together on group activities. Like, that's how you learn to talk to the other kid in the classroom. And when we're in our jobs, again, we have to relate, over a product, a service, or an event. We have to relate to each other on things. But when you become a parent, or you pivot your career, or you become retired or sick, suddenly that focal point's taken away. And I think that is a huge contributor to loneliness, because you don't have that thing to talk to people about. And so what I inadvertently did and realized the power of is by creating this document, which I call a book, but it's like a 30-page PDF, it gives a platform for conversation. So it's like, hey, I'm creating this thing, do you want to be part of it? And then it gives people choice, and then if you do, well, I kind of created like 13 kind of pieces of information that people could share if they wanted to, like, and real basic things that I was like, why am I asking people this? Like, your first name and your surname. And I'm like, I know it, but I thought, no, I want to give them the opportunity to just share what they want to share. And it's not just other Danielle's, Danny's, or the Steve and Steve's. It's some of the things that came back, I was like, wow. Like one of them was on my husband's side, we were like, sorry, who's Uncle Tomo? Like he had this uncle that we'd been calling Ian. Forever. And then it came back Uncle Tomo, and we're like, what? And he was talking to his cousin going, your dad is like Uncle Tomo? She's like, oh yeah, he hates being called Ian. It was like, he's been polite for like 40 years. It was like, yeah, he'd been polite for 40 years. He and his wife, who's my husband's blood auntie, had always signed Christmas cards and birthday cards Uncle Ian. That didn't help. But he preferred Tomo, and there were lots of other little surprises with the names. I was like, oh, I had no idea. And where people lived, what they wanted to share. Like, some people actually gave their address, which I was like, oh wow, that's didn't realize. I thought you were really private. I had just misassumed that. And some people were like, didn't want to share any, like, don't put anything down. I don't want people to know anything where I live. I'm like, that's okay. That's fine. I won't put that down. And yeah, it was just and people's dream jobs was really interesting. Some people that were wanting to share that, and some people just didn't. And it was, the question there, is it because you don't have a dream job, or you've never thought about it, or you just don't want to share it, I think is an interesting conversation itself. But and it's the favorite movies, books, and places in nature, really. Just you think cool. Your immediate family, you think you can guess them, and like I definitely, me and my husband knew each other's, but I was really like, my mum, I mean, she was married to Dad for 50 years, and they were best friends. She was his primary caregiver for the last 20 years because Dad had a range of disabilities, and in the end, but I said, Mum's asking me everything, like, she's got to do it with Dad, And so she did, and she very nearly didn't ask him some things like musical instrument. And when Dad said piano, Mum just about felt like she just passed out. She's like, "What? You can play the piano?" Like, she just didn't even know this about Dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, had no idea that my dad could play the piano. And I was like, oh, actually, that makes sense. He'd come and listen to me play the piano when I was practicing. And I was like, oh, yeah, his favourite song, Mum, is the Fur Elise by Beethoven. She was like, sorry, what? Like, like she was thinking maybe Jingle Bells or Chopsticks or something. But it was like, yeah, she was like, no, he really loved the piano. Like, just didn't know. Like, I guess we spend so much time when we relate to each other, relating over problems, over complaints, relating over, common like, COVID or politics or these kind of these stories that we relate to each other over. But, how much do, a song or maybe a book, like why is that chosen? And then to find out that there was another cousin that you didn't even know existed, chose the exact same one. Out of all the songs in the world, out of all the books in the world, like, it's like, and we're not, okay, there's a lot of Harry Potters, like, and for some reason in every family so far, it's like, there's always someone that chooses Bohemian Rhapsody, which is a beautiful song, but it's, and yeah, there's always someone that chooses Harry Potter, and there's always someone that chooses Lord of the Rings, so far in our experience, but some of the other books, it's like, I'd never heard of that movie before, and yet there's these cousins who didn't know they existed, or vaguely did, and they've both chosen this really, Oklahoma musical from way back, like what's
That's
going
so cool.
on there? And they do say in emerging science, which I can't talk a lot to because I'm not an expert in it, but I'd love to be one day, that you don't just inherit eye colour in family and height and hair colour and that, you actually inherit experiences. So you inherit, you inherit traumas, good and obviously traumas.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
You also inherit like these really amazing experiences as well. So they're, that's at the, science isn't meant to stay the same. It's meant to continuously evolve with our understanding. And I think in today's society we kind of forget that when a lot of governments are generally like to just keep science the same because that's what's safe. But there is a lot of emerging science that's indicating that we what we inherit through our genes and our DNA is much greater than we thought it was, and we have choices there. But yeah, so like, the family that likes heights, that great grandfather that connects that family together, he was turns out I knew he was a sawmiller, but he actually climbed these trees. He'd go and selectively identify these ancient trees in the forest, and there's nice stories around. Apparently, you hear the tree singing when it's about to die or whatever. So I like to think of that. But he'd select these trees and to be cut down and sawed, but he'd climb them, and they were around like 50 meters tall, and he'd climb them in crampons and a rope, and that was it. Like none of the safety harnesses today. And that's what he did day in, day out. And then for one of his grandchildren who didn't know this at all, to have this propensity towards climbing his entire life and climbs 50-meter high transmission towers is like,
that's so cool.
How do you can't make that up.
No, you can't. No.
And he had no idea about, like, we knew he vaguely had stuff to do with trees and sawmilling, but when I worked it out, I was like, oh, these trees would have been this high, and so what did he use? And I look at the photos and I listen to the stories. I'm like, oh my god, that's yeah. And like this particular family, his great grandson loves it, like loves being up high, like, and he thinks that's normal. I'm like, it's not normal.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's not normal.
That's so cool. One question before we wrap it up. We don't want to keep you too long. What can people do, or where can people find more information if they want to tap into that village design concept and maybe get like a questionnaire like you mentioned?
So they can, I have a new website, it's CheriO'Connell.com. I am also on Instagram. You won't find me on Facebook. Which I do find I challenge myself around every now and then. I'm like, why aren't I on Facebook? Like, maybe I could, people that might, there's a lot of people that aren't on Instagram. Like, I could maybe reach people on Facebook, but I just can't do it. So I'm on Instagram. I'm on I've got a website, but even then, like, so yeah, I kind of will be sharing kind of tips and through my writing blogs, and I do little reels, which it's hard to do in 90 seconds, but you give it a go on Instagram. And I am wanting to design like a course that people can actually like do online. But if very happy to help people on the journey. But yeah, I highly like, with the holiday season coming up. I think one of the easiest things for people is if you know an extended family member and you're not in touch with them, and because of a story or a thought you have that maybe they don't want to hear from you or whatever it is, I would just go for it. Like, just go, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe I've got this really wrong, and just go with an open mind, just curiosity, and go just to find out for yourself. And and like, as one cousin said to me, like, I mean, I said, oh, it's a bit, sometimes I go, what am I doing? And they're like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, what are they going to do to you?
Right.
You can hang up the phone. Like,
yeah.
Throw it away and run.
Delete the email. Like, and some people, like, if they've, if you've got family members who've been to, like, I don't know, prison or whatever it is, it's like, okay, well, maybe don't give them the keys to your house or whatever it is. But, it's a big difference between that and a phone call. And some people, I think, that have had these kind of past, and they're judged from it, and are kind of, oh, well, we don't really want anything to do with them because, they did this. It's like, well, what if they've turned their life around? And, like, that's, for me, that's greatness.
Yeah.
And sometimes, in actually having contact with family and not feeling like you're a bad person, like, you're worthy of connection, you have no idea how much that helps someone. So yeah, really highly recommend just connecting with someone, and with an extended family member. If you're someone who's like, oh, I would like to have a conversation around Christmas time and have part of that family share. I think that's is simple. It's something that everyone can do, and you just kind of got to get over yourself, really, and that thought you have or that story. And yeah, highly recommend Ancestry.com as well. That's just fun. It's just a lot of fun, and you just don't know the surprises that you might have, or the surprises that you might contribute towards other people having, with going, oh wow, I thought it turns out I've got this whole other family I never knew that existed, and it's really cool in itself. Yeah.
Do you want to add something?
No, I think we've covered it all.
Yeah. There's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to ask you, but there's no time. Also, I wanted to keep it just about the village design, because it's so interesting to me, and I'm blessed with an extended family that I cherish and love, and that I have a very good relationship to, and I know that, especially nowadays, especially in America through Danielle, it's not normal, and I grew up thinking that is normal, and even in Austria, where we are so close together, most of us, it's not normal, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for coming up with that, because I think, especially now with the Christmas season, holidays coming up, that's where people feel lonely, and especially lonely, and that's a good tip to just reach out, just call, jump over your own shadow, and just do it.
Yeah, and they can't, like, you're part of that family no matter what. Like, there's no membership fees or forms to sign or compulsory meetings. So they might make you feel like you need to turn up to Christmas, but they might be seen to be in a compulsory meeting, but they can't kick you out. They really can't, and people get over it. And people are consistent. So if you've got a difficult family member, and you think, and particularly if they're kind of like a gatekeeper, like if they're like, I don't know, it's just not about any of my aunts and uncles, but if they, if getting in touch with their children who are your age or your generation is difficult because of them or for whatever reason, or you think, oh no, but their children won't want to hear from me because they don't like me because they're difficult. It's that thought, again, that's just a thought, and to be honest, they're consistent. If they're difficult to you, or they've done this, and and that's a fact, it's not a story, it's actually happened to you, then people are consistent. They would have been difficult to other people, and if you reach out, then there's a good chance that they've also really wanted to hear from someone who's not like that, and that is a bit more open-minded and open-hearted, and it's no, thank you very much for having me. It's been a
thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much. It was very cool to talk to you, and we'll link everything down in the description. People can look on your website and get more info, and maybe hit you up if they have questions. And we wish you a pleasant day today and a nice holiday season.
Yeah.
And
yes, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you again. No. Thank you, Cheri.
We're going to put in both of those like start stops.
Yeah, we have
great.
to now. Now that you said it, we have to.
I know. That's why I said it.
That was a cool... You know, when she texted us and explained the concept of the village design, I didn't really understand it at first.
I was the same. I kind of got the general idea, but I also
Sorry, I have to
felt, oh boy,
I'm a little sick.
That's some nice ASMR.
I did it away from the microphone, so
You can still hear it. But I understood the general concept or the general idea, but I couldn't quite grasp like what the full picture was.
So
I was excited to talk to her to like
Yeah.
realize, like understand what it is, and it's
Also-
really fascinating.
I didn't even ask that question, but we'll link her website and you should definitely go on there and read about her a little bit. But that woman is fascinating. I mean, she said that she has a background in science, but that woman was part of the Paris Climate Agreement. That alone, we didn't get into at all because I didn't want to make it about that, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
So she is a very knowledgeable woman, and the concept alone is fascinating. And
There was one part of the discussion where when she first brought up ancestry, and she's talking about how, like, you know, so you might get a message from somebody saying like, "Hey, I'm your cousin or your brother or whatever."
Yeah.
It made me think of the Netflix documentary that I watched.
Which one?
Yes, some like true crime thing,
Uh-huh.
where there's like people were trying to find out who their dad was.
Yeah.
And it was some doctor who like used his own seed when helping women with like IVF.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Ended up having like, I think over 100 children within
no.
one state. So the odds of them
having
potentially meeting each other and having
Oh,
a
no.
relationship. Yeah. But that reminded me of it because that's how all those people found each other, was on something like that, where they would get messages like, "We found a sister of yours," or "We found a brother of yours." It's like 80 people. Just
Oh no.
so she's like, "You'll never know what surprises you find." That's what I was thinking of.
Maybe you're living in an incest town.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
I think that's the first episode of... No, is it the first episode?
Also,
no,
can I just
it's the last
say-
episode of this year.
Yeah. Can I just say though,
Yeah.
I love her accent.
Yeah.
It's my all-time favorite accent.
Yeah.
And when you told me that she was from New Zealand and I knew she was going to be on the show, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just going to be like
Yeah.
mesmerized by her voice the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I was.
Yeah. Lovely accent. Yeah. Again, we put everything down in the description. And if you want to support us, go over to our Patreon. You can become a Patreon for as little as $5 or $4.99 a month. And if you want to know more, go on our website, Instagram, social media, and please subscribe, follow, like
Rate.
and rate
Review.
the podcast. That's
It
it.
helps us.
It really helps us. Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Watch out for deer.